Alright, so I want to talk about something that I think a lot of developers already feel but haven't really said out aloud. Most AI apps that are getting built right now, they are just wrappers. You take a prompt, send it to OpenAI or Anthropic, get a response back, slap a UI on it, and call it a product. And look, I get it, it's fast to build, it feels like you're shipping something real. But if that's all you're doing, you don't actually have a product. You have a very expensive middleman. So in this video, I want to break down why this happens, what the real gap is, and what it actually takes to build something that isn't just a reskin of ChatGPT interface. So what do I actually mean when I say API wrapper? Here's the simplest version. User types something, your app takes that input, ships it directly to GPT or Claude, and returns whatever comes back. The app itself adds almost nothing. No business logic, no intelligent routing, no memory, no real guardrails. Just pass through with a logo. And to be fair, when you first prototype something, that is totally fine. That's how you validate an idea. The problem is when this takes the architecture into production. Because at that point, what you're selling is access to someone else's API with a worse interface and a higher price tag. That's not a moat, it's a liability. And here's why this trap is so easy to fall into. Building an API wrapper feels productive. You spin something up in a weekend, it demos beautifully, and people say, wow, this is smart. And technically, you did ship it. The LLM is doing heavy lifting, so it feels like your app is capable. But here's the thing, every single one of those capabilities lives at the API layer and not in your code. The moment OpenAI changes a pricing tier or deprecates a model or a competitor releases a better API, your entire product is disrupted because you haven't built anything that's uniquely yours. So let's talk about what uniquely yours actually looks like. Okay, so let me give you a mental model that I think actually reframes this. There are three layers to a real AI application. At the top, that the most people build is the LLM layer. That's just the API call. Below that is a logic layer. This is where routing happens, where you manage memory, where you orchestrate multiple agents or tools. And at the very bottom is the data layer, your proprietary context, your user history, your domain specific knowledge. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The LLM layer is the one that anyone can build in a weekend. The closer you get to the bottom, the harder it is to replicate, and that's exactly how your real value needs to live. So, what does a real AI product actually have that a wrapper doesn't? Let me walk you through it because this is where it gets really interesting. The difference is in the model. Both can call GPT-4 or cloud. The difference is everything around that model. Real products have persistent memory, so conversations get smarter over time. They have domain specific retrieval and not generic search, but deeply curated context about your users and your problem. They have logic that routes different types of inputs to different tools or models. They have feedback loops that actually improve behavior. When you have all of that, the LLM is just one component in a system and not the entire system itself. And that's when you have a product. One of the biggest gaps I see in most AI applications is the memory. And I don't mean storing the last 10 messages in a list and dumping them into the context window. That's not memory, that's just a transcript. Real memory means knowing that this specific user prefers concise answers. It means remembering that last week they were working on a Python project that uses fast API. It means extracting entities that are names, projects, goals, and keeping them accessible across sessions. When you build memory well, your app gets smarter the more someone uses it. That's a completely different value proposition than a tool that resets every time. And most rappers skip this entirely because it's hard to build. This brings me to something that I think is genuinely underappreciated distinction: context engineering versus prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is about how you phrase the instruction you give the model. Context engineering is about what you include around that instruction: the retrieval documents, the user's history, the tool outputs from previous steps, the memory state. The model doesn't get smarter, you get smarter about what you feed it. And that shift in thinking from how do I write a better prompt to how do I build a better context pipeline, that's a shift that separates good AI applications from great ones. If you're still treating a system prompt as your main differentiator, you're still thinking like a wrapper builder. Alright, let's talk about routing. Because this is one of those things that seems like a small implementation detail but is actually fundamental to the feel of your product. The idea is pretty simple. Not every query should go to the same place. If someone asks your AI application a question about your product's documents, that should hit your rack pipeline. If they ask it to write a SQL query, maybe that goes to a code focused model or a tool. If they ask what happened in the news today, that should trigger a web search tool. When you build intelligent routing, your app stops feeling like a chatbot and starts feeling like a system. It feels responsive, fast, and accurate in a way that a single LLM call never can be. Let me make this concrete. Imagine two applications, both using GPT. Application A takes your input and sends it to the API, returns the response. Application B does this. It checks what type of query you're asking, pulls relevant documents from a vector store, injects your past preferences, routes to a specific model if needed, and returns a grounded, context aware answer. Both applications spend roughly the same amount per API call, but application B is dramatically more useful. It's faster to trust. It makes fewer hallucinations because it's grounding answers in retrieved facts. It feels personalized. That's the delta, and it has nothing to do with whichever model you're calling. Now, I want to zoom out for a second because this isn't just engineering argument, it's a business argument. If your application is a wrapper, your competitive advantage disappears the moment someone starts building the same wrapper with a cheaper compute or a better model. There's no switching cost for your users, there's no proprietary data flywheel, there's nothing that gets better over time just because you have been running it. But if you've built real memory, real retrieval, real routing, you have something that's genuinely hard to replicate quickly. Your users' data makes your product smarter. That creates switching costs, that creates retention. And that's what investors mean when they actually say, what's the amount? So if you're watching this and thinking, okay, my app is kind of a wrapper right now, where do I start? Here's a practical sequence. First, add memory. Even basic user preference storage is a massive improvement over stateless chat. Second, build a retrieval pipeline. If your application has a specific domain, embed your documents, your FAQs, your data, and retrieve them on every relevant query. Third, implement routing. Not every question needs the same path, so build logic that sends different intents to different tools. And fourth, and this is one of the most underrated one, build feedback loops. Let user flag bad responses, log what's going on, use that to improve your prompts, your retrieval, your routing. These four things alone will transform a wrapper into something that actually deserves to be a product. Look, building an API wrapper isn't a sin, it's a starting point, but it can't be where you stop. Developers who are going to build meaningful AI products in the next few years are the ones who understand that the model is just one piece of the puzzle. The real work is in the architecture around it, the memory, the retrieval, the routing, the feedback loops. That's where your value is. That's what your users will feel, and that's what will actually stick. Subscribe if you want more content like this because we go deep on this stuff every week, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.